Hello, team. This is Dr. Miranda. It is indeed a great privilege, great opportunity to spend this time with you. We're going to be looking today at some other components of strategic management. Again, this has been a very fast-paced 5-week course, which we are looking at the management in a very strategic manner. This is very important because as managers, as executives, as directors, we want to make sure that we are on the cutting edge of understanding the principles of strategic management. Also, we want to use these principles, we want to use these tools as the means of becoming strategic managers, meaning we are not managers that simply sit and react to things as they come. We want to be strategic in our positioning. We want to be strategic in our outlook. We want to be strategic on how we conduct the business, on how we manage the resources, be it human or other assets of the firm. So we're going to right now focus on a few tools that we can use as managers to be strategic in our thinking, to be strategic in our outreach, to be strategic in our management style. Okay. And so we are going to be looking today at a classic strategic management tool. This is something that is used for analysis. One of the things that's very important for us as managers to have is the ability to look at data, to look at information, and provide some very cutting edge analysis of that information, of that specific event. For that, we are very fortunate to have a plethora of tools that we can look to, right? For example, we can use the Porter's generic competitive forces analysis. We can use Porter's value chain strategies. We can use a horizontal and vertical integration. We can look at the ENSOF matrix. We can utilize the BCG growth share matrix, the GE/McKinsey matrix, or we can also look at the core competencies of the firm. Now, each and every one of those will deserve at least an hour, hour and a half of discussion. What we're going to do is we are going to look at Porter's generic competitive forces, okay, and these strategies on how we can utilize them, okay, for the betterment of our department, of our operation, of our firm, because the more information we have as managers, the better our organization will be. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the Porter's generic competitive strategies. One is a firm's relative position within its industry. It determines whether a firm's profitability is above or below the industry average. Now, the fundamental basis of above average profitability in the long run is sustainable competitive advantage. Now, please underline that because it's very important. Sustainable competitive advantage, because not only do you want to have a competitive advantage, but you want your competitive advantage to be sustainable, meaning it is sustained throughout a certain amount of time, okay? And it is something that you can relatively depend on. Okay, now there are two basic types of competitive advantage a firm can possess, either a low cost or differentiation. Okay, now the two basic types of competitive advantage combined with the scope of activities for which a firm seeks to achieve them lead to three generic strategies for achieving above average performance in an industry: cost leadership, differentiation, and focus. Now, focus strategy, again, has two variants. They are cost focus and differentiation focus. Now, we're going to talk about, again, focusing on Porter's generic competitive strategies. Let's talk about cost leadership. In cost leadership, a firm sets out to become the low-cost producer in its industry. Okay? The sources of cost advantage are varied and depend on the structure of the industry. They may include the pursuit of economies of scale, proprietary technology, preferential access to raw materials, and other factors. A low-cost producer must find and exploit all sources of cost advantage. If a firm can achieve and sustain overall cost leadership, then it will be an above-average performer in its industry, provided it can command prices at near or industry advantage. It's interesting because when we look at cost leadership as a strategy, what are the first names that come to mind? Well, Walmart, right? Cost is low, right? And then somebody say Target. Okay? But the cost leadership, it's interesting because it seeks out through the firm to become the low-cost producer. Okay? So that is a strategy for competition. The other one is differentiation. In the differentiation strategy, a firm seeks to be unique in its industry along some dimensions that are widely valued by buyers. It selects one or more attributes that many buyers in an industry perceive as important, and uniquely positions itself to meet those needs. It is rewarded for its uniqueness with a premium price. I'm holding here something that when it was launched, it had a tremendous competitive advantage. It did not because it was different. Differentiation itself, it's an iPhone. It set itself apart from the products. It actually became an industry shaker and mover. But over time, it had other competitors. Other people came into the market. And some would argue produce even better products, even better smartphones. Now, I'm not going to get into a discussion whether an iPhone is better than, a Samsung or an Android. It's not the focus of our communication, right? I remember when I worked in an international bank, there was a fellow manager. We were executives, and he was always in a fight with our superior, with our director, over whether his iPhone was better than the boss's Android. So it was also always fun to watch. Okay, but remember what the market will reward your company if your product is different enough, if it is unique enough, right? And how does it reward you? With a premium price. Okay, so for when you release that product or service that is different for a small window of time, you will enjoy premium prices and profit. Okay. The other one is focus. The generic strategy of focus rests on the choice of a narrow competitive scope within an industry. The focuser selects a segment or group of segments in the industry and tailors its strategy to serving them for the exclusion of others, right? It's focusing on a certain segment, and it says, I am going to be competitive only by serving that sector that no one else serves. Now, the focus strategy has two variants. A, in cost focus, a firm seeks a cost advantage in its target segment, while in B, differentiation focus, a firm seeks differentiation in its target segment. Both variants of the focus strategy rest on differences between a focuser's target segment and other segments in the industry. The production and delivery system that best serves the target segment must differ from that of the other industry segments. Cost focus now exploits differences in cost behavior in some segments, while differentiation focus exploits the special needs of buyers of certain segments. They seem so similar, those two variants, right, of the focus strategy. But again, the focus is on the niche. Okay. Now, we can talk about the Porter's value chain strategy. What is it? The Porter's value chain is a useful strategic management tool. And what it does, it works by breaking an organizational activities down into strategically relevant pieces so that you can see a fuller picture of the cost drivers and sources of differentiation and then make changes appropriately. Okay. Now, to identify and understand your company's value chain, follow these steps. It's always best, though, to follow these steps with a piece of paper, with some pen or pencil, with some coffee and some tea, and often with a good group of managers who are open-minded to looking at the company's value chain. Step one, right? Identify sub-activities for each primary activity. For each primary activity, determine which specific sub-activities create value. There are three different types of sub-activities. One, there's the direct activities, and these create value by themselves. For example, in the book publisher's marketing and sales activity, direct sub-activities include marketing sales calls to bookstores, advertising, and selling online. There are indirect activities. They allow direct activities to run smoothly. For the book publisher's sales and marketing activity, indirect sub-activities include what? Managing the sales force and keeping customer records. And then there's quality assurance. These are activities that ensure that direct and indirect activities meet the necessary standards. For the book publisher's sales and marketing activity, this might include proofreading and editing advertisements. Listen, quality is going to be very important because I have seen some very interesting advertisements, okay, that it actually created some problems, right? Because either they were not sensitive to the market, they weren't sensitive to the target, they weren't sensitive to the people, or they contain outright grammatical issues, okay? Now, step number two, identifying the value chain, right, is identify sub-activities for each support activity. Now, for each of the human resource management, technology development, and procurement support activities, determine the sub-activities that create value within each primary activity. For example, consider how human resource management adds value to inbound logistics, operations, outbound logistics, and so on. As in step one, always look for direct, indirect, and quality assurance sub-activities. Then, identify the various value-creating sub-activities in your company's infrastructure. These will generally be cross-functional in nature rather than specific to each primary activity. Again, look for direct, indirect, and quality assurance activities. Number three, step in identifying value chain strategy is identifying linkages. Find the connections between all of the value activities you've identified. This will take time, but the links are key to increasing competitive advantage from the value chain framework. For example, there's a link between developing the sales force, let's say an HR investment, and sales volumes. There's another link between order turnaround times and service phone calls from frustrated customers waiting for deliveries. Step four, look for opportunities to increase value. And this is always the very most important thing that we do. We're always looking for those activities to maximize value. Review each of the sub-activities and links that you identify. And think about how you can change or enhance it to maximize the value you offer to customers. Customers of support activities can be internal as well as external. Now, tip number one, your organization's value chain should reflect its overall generic business strategies. So when deciding how to improve your value chain, be clear about whether you're trying to set yourself apart from your competitors or simply have a lower cost base. Tip number two, you'll inevitably end up with a huge list of changes. If you're struggling to choose the most important changes to make, okay, now um, you have to always focus then on what's doable, what's affordable, what's going to cause the least amount of tumult in a company. Sometimes you can't just change, the Titanic doesn't turn that fast. Sometimes some of these changes, in order to minimize disruptions, need to be made over time and very diligently, okay, very expertly, and very cautiously, right? Say, you're afraid of rocking the boat, Dr. Miranda. Yes, especially if I'm in a river full of piranhas. I don't want to rock the boat, okay? Now, if I'm in a boat full of piranhas in a leaking boat, then of course we're going to address the leakage first, okay? As we paddle or motor our way to the safety of the river's edge or the bank, okay? But no rocking the boat on a river full of piranhas just for the sake of rocking the boat. Tip number three, this looks at the idea of a value chain from a broad organizational viewpoint. Now, of course, there are the tools when we look at vertical and horizontal integration, okay? But this is something that we are going to touch on our next lesson. So I'm going to ask you to please focus on the text for these particular areas, okay? It will be really wonderful if you also look at the supplement information that's been provided for you on Michael Porter, because I can tell you, this man is a giant in industries, has brought his ideas have really moved. He's been a mover and a shaker, okay, and has given managers the ability to be very strategic in their approach, strategic in how they conduct business, and how they manage the affairs of the business. Thank you very much. Should you have any questions, please contact me. It will be an honor